As part of my review and evaluation of PSVR2, I wanted to find out which is faster, whether it's faster to drive with a traditional flat screen or whether it's faster to drive in VR. Driving in VR feels amazing, but can it be fast? The testing method for this one is to use the weekly time trial. This week is the Fuji Speedway with the Toyota GT1, the brand new car added to update 1.44. This is a good test for a few reasons. The standard flat screen cockpit view in this car is incredibly hard to use, and playing it in VR, it gives you that depth, it gives you that 3D and the ability to move around. So I expect to be slower in VR just because of the restricted view. When you're playing in the flat screen, I play from like the hood cam view, so you get an elevated driver position and you get to kind of see more of the track ahead. So it'll be really interesting to see how this one plays out. I first set a benchmark lap in flat screen. It was just inside the goal time, so that's when I switched to VR to see if I could beat that. And then without too much effort in VR, I did beat that lap time. I got a 1:32.691. Again, creeping forwards closer towards that goal. That put me quite near the top of my friend's leaderboard. Coming straight out of VR back into flat screen from my normal playing position, and I found that I was finding it difficult to judge speeds. I was overshooting the corners a little bit. I wasn't steering enough and I wasn't steering early enough, so I was missing almost every single apex. So switching back to flat screen from doing maybe 5 or 10 minutes solidly in VR, I was definitely carrying too much speed. I was finding it much more difficult to judge the speed of the car. Now of course you'd expect a little bit of time to need to adjust, but almost every single apex, as you've seen from this video clip right here, I've missed every single apex by a good couple of meters. And it's just that transition. In VR you get the sense of speed. In flat screen you don't get a sense of speed, and you're relying much more on braking reference points. Driving in flat screens feels a little bit more like it's more of a process, like this is the braking point, this is the turning point, this is the acceleration point, whereas driving in VR, it's more of a driving based on feeling. Now this is my full best lap in flat screen, and ahead of me is the ghost of the fastest driver in the world. I have this as my reference ghost both in the VR lap and also the flat screen lap. And you see into turn 1, and just a little bit deep on the brakes, but I do get a good corner exit. Looking towards turn 2, we're going to look for the mark on the floor on the curb, and then the turning point, just clipping there, run a little bit wide as we can. Now in the 2D flat screen view, because your viewpoint is fixed to the car, a lot of the references that you see that go by the side of the screen or just over the top of the screen, you can use those to very accurately time when you get on the brakes, when you turn in. Those reference points always exist, and you can watch the replay of the fastest drivers in the world to compare those references. Again, also I find in flat 2D from the view that I play in, basically this is my esports tryhard view, this allows me to basically look ahead a reasonably good distance and basically plan the shape of the corners. I find that the shape of the corners, understanding that is very important, especially Fuji Sector 3. At some points in Sector 3 you can be driving completely the opposite way to the direction you need to be going and turning, so it's important to understand the shape of the corners. So we're going to go to exit from the final corner, running to the line. Is it going to beat my reference VR lap? It looked like it could do. 1:32.575, so I beat it by 1/10 of a second. Although not a perfect lap in flat screen, it is surprising to only beat my VR lap time by 0.1 of a second. It does put me within 2% of the fastest driver in the world, within the top 1,000 in the world, which isn't bad considering I'm switching between backwards and forwards between VR and flat. And it was only a 15-minute session up until this point, so I think I can go faster than that in VR. So I'm going to continue to push more, and we don't even start the lap. We get a spin, not so good. And you see, just the mannerisms translate in VR. The sigh of not being able to do what I want to do was very apparent. But this lap is going to be my best lap in VR. So we're going to ride on board. I'm going to talk you through how it feels and what I was looking for. The ghost you'll see ahead is the fastest driver in the world, approaching the start-finish line to start the lap. and just naturally I feel like I want to glance in the mirrors. I know it's a time trial, there's no other cars on the track, but it feels so natural and immersive that I do the same things I do when I'm driving a car in real life. Looking for braking reference points, it was difficult to find some of them. I needed to find new reference points in VR. I was a bit deep into turn 1 actually, so not a fantastic corner there, so there is some time left on the table. And looking for the braking points, I found in VR my braking points and my turning points were really strong. Where I was suffering in VR is my confidence to exit the corners. It was a bit more difficult to see where I should be exiting the corners, so until I really started to push myself, I was a bit delayed getting on the gas, exiting the corners, and just pushing yourself harder and harder to exit the corners harder. It definitely found lap time for me. Through this section of the track, Fuji Sector 3, you can be driving in so many different directions that playing in VR was actually really quite good. I could look towards the apex, I could look towards a different part of the track that I wasn't driving towards, especially this left-hander here. We're going to glance over the apex, look to connect with the apex, then get on the gas on corner exit. Really good in VR. Again, this right-hander looking towards the apex, much better than in the flat 2D cockpit view. It's so awkward to drive in flat 2D cockpit view. VR cockpit view is way better than when you're just driving in flat 2D cockpit view. So across the line, we are going to beat our lap time. I'm going to glance over here, very excited. As you can see, the mannerisms transfer. Looking down here, that's a 1 minute 32.397. It's going to beat our flat screen lap time by a chunk. So that's going to put us at 1.8% of the fastest, top 700 in the world. So I think it's possible to be fast in VR, but whether it's fastest or not is to be determined. I'm going to speak about that a little bit later in the video, but PSVR2 is good and it's also bad. It's not without its problems. During the time trial session, I had the bloody PlayStation Network error come up on right in front of this. Why is this on the screen? Very frustrating. It really just blocked my lap. Crashing and errors is still easily possible in VR, especially on corner exits, because it's difficult to see that kind of flow of the exit corner, and just the mannerisms translate. The sigh of frustration is going to get a real swaz on here, and this bit was magical, guys. Looking towards the way the car was sliding and then seeing the grass just kick onto the track, it just puts you in the game. So which actually is the fastest way to drive in Gran Turismo 7? Is it with the 2D flat screen, or is it with Sony PSVR2? I've really enjoyed driving with PSVR. It's incredibly fun and immersive, and based on the results you've just seen, PSVR was the fastest. But as much as I tried to test it as fairly and complete as possible, there is always a way to be faster. There is always a tenth of a second here or there which you can improve your lap time, and I think I could be faster with my flat screen laptop, and I think I could be faster with my flat screen lap, and also I think there's time left on the table with my VR lap as well. So the summary for me is, if you're driving with the cockpit view in 2D, switching to PSVR in cockpit view, I think you'll be faster, as long as you're okay with VR. I know some people get some motion sickness, but I think cockpit view between flat screen and VR, you will be faster in VR. The depth and immersion you get, the sense is incredible. But when you're comparing VR in which you're fixed to a cockpit view, when you compare with some of the esports driver views like the hood cam or the bumper cam, or even some esports drivers use chase cam, you get a lot more reference to see. You get a higher viewpoint, you can see the shape of the corners, and because you have a fixed viewpoint, you can see things that pass around the side of your monitor and use them as timing reference points. For me, when you're driving in 2D, the Gran Turismo, to be fast, it can be more about a timing game. So you specifically hit the brakes at a certain point, you specifically turn in at a certain point, you get on the gas at a certain point, and it's a lot more based on timing. When I'm driving Gran Turismo 7 in VR, it's more of a feeling driving experience. No longer are those exact reference points going to be the same every single lap. As your viewpoint moves around, things change. your driving experience in VR is more of a driving feeling experience, and I really like that. That's something that I find incredibly engaging. So the summary for me is you can be fast in VR. It's not a huge disadvantage to the driving experience. There are some things that are missing from VR, so you don't get your lap delta, which is slightly frustrating, and when you're racing you don't get the full leaderboard. Again, another slight disadvantage that may get updated in the future. It would be nice to see that, but if you truly want to be in the top 1% of everyone playing Gran Turismo, then I think the fastest way, the absolute fastest way to drive in Gran Turismo is from flat screen 2D, and it's a process. It's copy the fastest drivers in the world, hit their braking reference points, hit their turning points, and just copy exactly what they do in 2D. If you want to see an example of a fantastic race in PSVR, then click on the video on screen right now